Hi friends, welcome to Write That Book, and today we're going to be talking about character motivations. So when it comes to fiction, there are so many things to think about. There's characters and plot and setting, internal dialogue, all these things. But to really make a strong story, we need to make sure that our characters' motivation are right front and center. So when you start a book, you have your character, they have their everyday life. So things are just going along, and somewhere in the first chapter, something's going to change that is going to change the trajectory of that character. And we need to figure out that there's a conflict, something that will start the book. But the main thing we need to get through in that first chapter is, what does your character want more than anything? Once we know that, then we're willing to invest in, the reader's willing to invest in the book and follow that character through. So, first thing I want you to do is think about, what does my character want more than anything? Now, of course, if you have a romance type book, there'll be two characters, and it needs to be pretty clear what both of them want, and if that can be in conflict with each other, even better. So, as the book goes along, your character wants something, and then there'll be obstacles that come in the way, and that will stop the character from getting what he or she wants. And then by the end of the book, because we write Christian fiction, there's usually a happy ending. So either your character gets what he or she wants, or they get something even better. So we will talk about all those things. So first of all, when working on my novel, there's some things that I ask. What is my character's motivation? Now, this motivation will stem from an emotional need, and really, fiction is all about getting readers to get their emotions involved. They want to laugh, they want to cry. It's an emotional experience. If it is a book that, even though there's maybe an interesting plot, if the emotions aren't involved, if we aren't caring and laughing and crying with the characters, we say it's a boring book. We put it down, never pick it up again. So, what goal does my character have at the beginning of the book? Now, this will change as the book goes on, but there has to be that first goal that your character has. So, then also, what in the first chapter is going to be an obstacle that's going to keep your character from getting what he or she wants? So, there has to be some type of obstacle in the way that ties into the character's motivation. And then the plot will be, your whole plot of your book will be things that will stop the character from getting what he or she wants. So in the assignment, you could read, I decided to do this with a plot idea. This is something I just completely made up, and then afterwards I'm like, this might be a good book. I don't know, we'll see. But, okay, so let's try this out. And I'm reading from the assignment that I put in the group. So, Mary's a dancer, and the book starts with her swinging into a dry cleaner's to pick up a costume, so costume for a performance. It's clear she's distracted by her task, and she's looking at the time on her phone. So then she checks her voicemail, and she's disappointed because there's no messages for her. So we see right in the way, we see that something is on Mary's mind, even as she's rushing in to pick up her costume at the dry cleaner's. The guy behind the counter asks Mary about her opening a performance tonight at the community theater, and she brushes him off. She's not interested in him at all. She leaves in a hurry, and then her phone rings. Mary answers it quickly, and she's disappointed to hear it's her friend Lucy, who's also an actor. Lucy tells Mary she's late, and it's not good as a lead actress. Mary says she's catching a bus at that moment, but instead the bus is going to pull away, so we know that Mary just lied to her friend Lucy, everyone's waiting for her at the theater. And Mary runs down the block to an office building. She hurries inside this office building, and there's a secretary at the desk, and Roxanne, the secretary, is excited to see Mary, but Roxanne's confused. And so she asks, "What are you doing at this part of town?" Mary says, "I'm just picking up dry cleaning." Roxanne scowls, and she says, "There's lots of dry cleaners near to your apartment." And Mary shrugs and says, like she doesn't have an excuse, but Roxanne seems to know what's going on. And then Roxanne says, "Well, since you're here, I might as well give you these." And she pulls out flowers, and she says, "I was going to bring them tonight." And then with trembling fingers, Mary opens the card, and this is what the card says. "Good luck with the city theater. Sorry I had to go out of town. Let me know when you make it to Broadway. Love, Dad." Okay, stab to the heart right there. Then the reader understands. So that's not written, like I didn't, because I'm just explaining the character motivation, I didn't actually write that fictionalized. I just kind of summarized it like I would do for an outline. But the reader understands Mary's trying to get her dad's approval. And the book will be about Mary trying to do that. So no matter what happens, the love interest is probably the guy at the dry cleaners. She has her friend. Lucy, we know, is on her side. Roxanne is probably someone that's going to show up in the book and be on her side. So we know that what Mary wants more than anything is her dad's approval. And first of all, he didn't show up. He sent flowers through his secretary, and then he says, "Let me know when you're in Broadway." So basically, he's saying that she is not enough. So this sets up for Mary a few things. First of all, number one, the plot is going to be about her trying to make it to Broadway, because, of course, what is her emotional need? She wants her dad's approval. Number two, Mary's true motivation has to do with trying to make her dad proud. And so we probably can guess from just what's happened so far that she has not been successful in this at all. Number three, she will have friends and foes, those who are trying to help her and those who are trying to pull her down. And helping her might be her to see that getting to Broadway isn't worth it, but these will seem like foes to her. So her friend Lucy might be saying, "No, really, you are the top here. Everyone loves you. Look at what's happening here in the community theater. Look at the people you're serving." But to Mary, Lucy might seem like an enemy who's trying to keep her from following her dreams. So there can be some conflict there. Mary will most likely hurt those who are trying to help her as she strives to please her dad. So again, her friend Lucy, who might be trying to help her, encourage her, she might end up hurting the friendship because she's trying to get her dad's approval. Mary will have a struggling romance with the guy from the dry cleaners. We hinted because he's there. If I was fictionalized, I would show more of the interaction between them that would make it clear to the reader that he's interested in that. And we set this up, of course, by him being in the first chapter and being wonderful to her. Then the reader will be like, "Oh, I bet he's the guy." And then number 6 of the things that we're setting up for Mary, she'll either get what she wants or something better. And at the end, at the end of the book, she'll discover her true worth and realize that getting one's approval isn't the purpose of life. So maybe somehow she doesn't make it to Broadway, but she still gets her dad's approval. Or maybe she decides to stay and she learns that her dad's approval isn't what she needs. Maybe she does make it to Broadway and she still doesn't get his approval. So there's so many ways that this can go. But first of all, the whole plot needs to be centered around her desire for approval. So even as I wrote this sample idea, I felt the tension of Mary's motivation deep inside. And I understand this because I have a biological dad and a stepdad, and neither of them give me the attention or the approval that I crave. And so as I'm writing this, if you look at a lot of my books, it comes to wanting the approval and not getting it. So it's almost like me, it's like therapy, me working through my issues too. So I could write this character's emotions because I feel the same. And one of the first lessons that I had you do was, what are the themes of your life? And if there's a theme in your novel that you can connect with, that you can feel those deep emotions, it makes it even more powerful. Because your readers will sense that this is part of you. And that's really what we want in our books. So even when the character shows her flaws, which she must in the course of the book, the readers will keep cheering her on because they have an emotional connection with her. So a character's motivation must go beyond the surface level to the heart level, and this is what makes great books. And this is often when I see books that I'm critiquing, they have all the right elements, but really they don't go to the heart level. And that's going to take you from being unpublished to published. So now let's talk about the dry cleaner guy. So let's call him Drake, and he needs motivations too. So of course the main character, Mary, is going to be her story, but it's also Drake's story because we're going to have him as a point of view character. So the best motivations for a love interest are the flip side of the protagonist. So for Drake, maybe the goal is for him His goal is to keep open his dry cleaners, which has been struggling. Maybe his father is rich and powerful, and Drake wants to take, and the father wants Drake to take over the family business. Maybe it's a real estate company that tears down old buildings and puts up new ones. So it's displacing a lot of people. So his dad, I could picture him in New York City, rich, powerful, tearing down old buildings, putting up new buildings, but there's a lot of people hurt in the process. So Drake, let's think about a little bit of his backstory. This is not going to show up for a while. It might come out, but so maybe he was raised by nannies and who are ordinary people. So he's learned to care about the people in his city that don't have very much. And then maybe that's why his dry cleaning business is struggling, because he's been helping people get on their feet instead of worrying about making money. So instead of this person who's going to follow his dad's footsteps and become rich and powerful, he cares about ordinary people. And because he cares so much and helps so many, his business is struggling. So the subplot may be all about Drake trying to keep his dry cleaning business open. His true motivation has to do with helping others and going against his dad. So that right now we just know that there'll be some conflict there. And again, just like Mary, Drake will have friends and foes. He will have those who will try to help them, and those who are going to try to pull him up to his father's company. So those who are going to try to make him rich and powerful and successful. So Drake will likely hurt even those who are trying to make it into a big business. And there'll be conflict with Mary as she's working so hard to get to Broadway and to seek her father's approval. So he might say something to her like, can't you see how much those people in the community theater love you? It's not about making to the top. It's about being with the people who love you. So do you see how this is the flip side of the same thing? Mary has this love of this community and this community theater, and she's trying to make it to the top. And because Drake is not willing to go to the top, and because he is helping people, he has a struggling business. So it's two sides of the same coin. So he'll have a struggling romance with Mary. He loves her, but she reminds him of his dad in so many ways. So they'll be pulled together and pushed apart, which is all what a romance is about. So he'll either get what he wants or something better in terms of the dry cleaner staying open. And in the end, maybe Drake is able to save the dry cleaners. Maybe the community theater does a fundraiser or something, and he's able to help Mary discover her true worth. But even though he's willing to point her the direction, it needs to be her discovering her true worth. And the reader will have hope that the father and son relationship will draw closer, and maybe Drake even finds a way to help his father. So, do you see how this motivation is the flip side of hers? This helps the plot and it carries the story along. So while we are helping the reader with all these emotions about what is our true worth, what is important about community, how can we understand ourselves, and what do we do if we don't have the approval of those above us? So Sam Williams discusses all of this in his book, which is called The Moral Premise, and it's a great book. I highly recommend it. He even has information about it. He has a blog on it that he will go through movies and share about the moral premise. So again, the book is The Moral Premise by Sam Williams. But in the book, the vice leads to defeat, but virtue leads to success. So what does this mean in our story? Striving to gain another's approval leads to feeling empty and alone, but surrounding yourself with a caring community leads to discovering your true worth and your life purpose. So do you see how both characters in their unique struggle are all about the same thing? So I'm going to read that again. Striving to gain another's approval leads to feeling empty and alone, but surrounding yourself with a caring community leads to discovering your true life worth and purpose. So think about that when it comes to your own novel. What does your character want more than anything? How can the antagonist be fighting against that if you have an antagonist in your book? Or if it's a romance, how can the other character's story be the flip side of that? But But even though they're the flip side of the same thing, it's all about one thing, which also should be tied into the theme of your life, which should also be emotional. So I just hope that will help you today about talking about characters' true motivation.